back to another episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we challenge the outdated notions of what strength, success, and leadership should look like, and instead carve out healthier and more sustainable ways for men to thrive. Yeah. Now, dear listeners, let's be real, I would say. Too many men chase success so relentlessly that they forget the cost. Businesses thrive but burn their leaders out. Careers skyrocket but at the expense of relationships and well being. And in our culture, we have been we are actually conditioned to believe that exhaustion and sacrifice are just a part of being a man. So, here the question comes what if the leadership could look different? Or what if building a business didn't mean losing yourself? Today, I'm joined by someone who lived their journey and now teaches others how to do it better. So please welcome my guest, Harrison Tash. Welcome to the show, Harrison.
Hey, Avec, thanks for having me. I'm certainly looking forward to this conversation.
Amazing. And dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'd quickly love to introduce you with Harrison. So Harrison started out under poor leadership in the trenches of small business, where he quickly learned what not to do. And later, he played a pivotal role in helping a large construction company double its revenue, not through the chaos, but by building leaders and the systems that made growth sustainable. Now, as the founder of Living Water Consulting and the author of Exit Without Living, he helps business owners scale their companies in a way that thrives with them but doesn't depend on them. So his Aid to Great framework is all about the freedom, sustainability, and building businesses and lives that don't collapse the moment you step away. That's amazing, right? So I'll not take much of your time, listeners. Let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Yes, thanks, Avec, and appreciate the intro there. Yeah, every time I hear that, it brings back these memories of working under some poor leadership and what that looked like. And it wasn't like it definitely wasn't like the small business that I had worked for prior wanted to be that way. They were just stressed out. They were kind of living like what you said earlier. They were guys who thought that, it was just all about putting in the grind and the hustle, and, they just got stressed out, and it showed in the way that they treated people and the way that they treated their time. So, I'm excited to talk about some of these things.
So I definitely love to ask you this. When we talk about the chaos to clarity, um, you started your journey like watching painfully poor leadership. So from that perspective and from that experience, what that session, okay, or maybe I would say season, teach you about how not to run a business or maybe a team.
Yeah, it's interesting because, when someone's leading a company or a department or a team, no one sets out to say, I want to make these people's lives terrible. I want to be stressed out. I want to live a life of chaos. Like no one sets out to do that, but yet we find ourselves there sometimes. And so really some of the poor leadership that I saw, a piece of it might come from some unethical business type of practices, but the majority of it came from because they thought everything really needed to go through them because they held all the keys to the castle. They were the person or the people that needed to make decisions, that needed to put their final say on things. And this just creates a ton of stress for people. And then you start to become somebody you set out to not be, right? And so I think there's a piece of it there that I learned very quickly where I'm like, oh, okay, everything's kind of sifting through just a couple people. And this is obviously a huge problem. And in my world, we call this, centralized decision making. And obviously, we want to get to more of a decentralized decision making within any business. But the other piece that I think is interesting is that I also saw where when someone started to let go of stuff, the leaders of the business or the executives or the owners started to let go of the business, meaning they said, okay, like, yes, you do this, you do this, you do this, and I'll let you make those decisions. There was also this, and you may not do that like on paper, you might just tell them. So it looks different for each business, but I say it needs to be clear on paper. But I also saw that they started to feel insecure when they did that. And I think this is just a human tendency that, like, when we do finally give up something, we either do this, like, we do this avoidance thing that you only show up when something goes wrong, or we do this micromanaging thing, this control thing where you just kind of creep over their shoulder and make sure that everything's happening the way it's supposed to be, and you think you're giving it away. So, I got to see really poor leadership on both sides of those scales and seeing it in these kind of scenarios, and there's probably multiple other ways that you could say I learned from poor leadership, but those were some of the big ways.
Very true. And like also that if I have to say that looking back now, do you think that early chaos was actually one of your greatest teachers?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a good teacher for sure. I kinda wish I could have started with, like, really good leadership, to see it first, but it was certainly a great teacher. And if you think of something like on the job type training, experiencing it first is always awesome, because you start to roll your sleeves up, you start to problem solve, and you learn things that you can never learn in any other way. So bad leadership certainly was that for me. It did teach me that, like, oh, when you don't work in a business where truly it's a thriving business with thriving leadership, healthy leaders is the way I like to say it. When you don't have that, you really feel it. And so if you work with someone who is, or if you are a healthy leader, you might, um, maybe in some ways just take it for advantage, right? Like you just don't take advantage of it. You might get used to it and you kind of lose some of that gratitude. So I think the gratitude that I have towards learning in that regard certainly did teach me a lot, no doubt.
Got it. And I mean, that's such a important point because sometimes the worst leadership we witness, it leaves the best lessons, like if you're willing to reflect, right?
Yeah.
Huh. And your book is titled like "Exit Without Leaving." That's such a fascinating phrase. What does it really mean to build, what to say, to build a business that thrives with you but doesn't depend on you?
Yeah, this burned out of a few different thoughts. One, obviously, I hate to see any business, large or small, depend on just a couple people, right? So we always think about leadership in a business. We think, okay, well, they own the business, or they're the executive of the business, or they run this department. And it's like they need to have the final say in all these things. They're like the last line of defense, and I think that's true. But I also see it where they might just have a little too much of the business or the department run through them, and it creates this like security, like job security. And I think it's actually the biggest compliment when you're gone for a month, and not to say you should be gone for a month, but when you're gone for a month and then it just runs smoothly, right? It's like that's the biggest compliment, and that's how you know you have the right leaders in place. When you truly can step away and then see it all happen without you. And so I really love that concept, but the other piece of it that I think is very impactful is we have this culture that's emerging, and it has been for a while, where we think of like this hustle culture where it's like, quickly build this thing that works without you and then just step away and collect the funds. And I think that's really unhealthy. Honestly, I think any organization runs better when the owners of those of those businesses are actually involved, and that's what I mean by it actually thrives better with you, but it doesn't depend on you. And you can think of it like this. We've worked with businesses in the past that it was a holdings company and the ownership was really like somewhere else, wasn't really involved. They might do some calls, things like that, but then the individuals that are running the business are there every day, and there just seemed to be this disconnect because the owner wasn't really there, or the owners. And so part of this book was to say, hey, it the whole idea of, like, just creating businesses that operate without you and your hands are clean, I think that's an okay model, but I think it's actually better when we're involved in our businesses and it isn't dependent on you, but it thrives more when you're there. And so I think that was a big piece of it.
I agree. I totally agree. And like for the leaders, I'd love to ask, like for the leaders listening who feel kind of chained to their businesses, what's the very first step to start loosening that grip? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I always my team always starts
Mm.
with your top line leaders.
Yeah.
And really it's to assess one thing that we like to say is and it's a framework in the book. It's a really easy one to remember. It's the gig.
Mm.
And this is the gig of healthy leaders, which is, are you growing, investing, and guiding not only yourself, but the people around you? And to me, that is the biggest indicator of if you have healthy leaders in your business. Are they growing, investing, and guiding in themselves and the people around them? And that's a balancing act, no doubt. And really, this is all encompassed with, do they hold themselves accountable? Do they hold others accountable? And are they willing to learn from anyone and anything? And of course, we know what it means to learn from anyone, but
Mm.
anything is like any situation. Can they learn from any situation, good or bad? Does it continually shape how they lead and how they act within the business? And I think this is really important to assess if your leaders are doing that well. And if you have some opportunity in your show notes, we'd love to give a free resource to kind of assess this. It's quick. It's a great, numbering system that helps you kind of see if this is true in your top line leaders.
Amazing. So, like, wow, like, ah, I mean, I think that strikes a chord with so many men, like, because freedom, not constant firefighting, should be the real marketer of the success, I guess, right? So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, the burnout trap. I mean, uh, how do you personally spot that early warning signs of burnout before it spirals? I mean, what is it?
Yeah. Burnout is kind of one of those things where it's also
Mm.
capacity, right? So when we look at, leaders that are getting burned out, and of course, this can be at all levels of the organization, it doesn't just have to be leadership. But one thing that we're going to look at very closely is what's the capacity of the leader in that position. And of course, you have competence, responsibilities. You have how they, we talked about earlier about how they delegate or empower people, things like this. But we have to look at capacity, and then you got to really boil it down and look at the role and say, is the role set up for success or is it set up for burnout? And really, what I mean by this is that when you're assessing your top line leaders, you have to look and say, what are the top three problems that they solve?
Mm.
What are the top three responsibilities that they have? And then what are the top three characteristics that you need? And when you look at this, one thing that you might notice is that You might be able to pinpoint those responsibilities and those problems that they solve. But when you get down to characteristics, you might be saying, oh, well, shoot, when I look at this, it's like we want them to be kind of techish, right? This is just an example. We want them to be kind of techish, but at the end of the day, they hate technology and they just love talking to people. And so, what if we have them on the wrong seat of the bus? What if they should be more in sales because they love just interacting with people? They don't like doing all the system side of things, which in today's world, systems typically are going to be very technology driven. And so maybe sometimes we got them in the wrong place, and so now their capacity is shorter fused than if they were in a different seat. And so I'm always looking and discussing with the executives and saying, maybe their capacity issue that they have, like if they're consistently burning out, has to do with capacity, and maybe it's because they're on the wrong seat of the bus. But then there's this other one, right, where we look at, burnout and say, "Man, they're kinda putting this on themselves. They're the right fit, they're the right role, but they're just putting it on themselves," and that's where you gotta look at and say, "Are they empowering their team well, and are they delegating well?" And there's a tons of questions that you could ask to see if this is true or not, but at the end of the day, most leaders, like, that really are the type of leaders that are like, "Let's get out and get after it," they typically will try to put too much on their back. And we have to consistently remind them and hold them accountable and say, "Well, wait a minute. I know it's gonna take you a little longer. I know it's gonna hurt to do this, but maybe Timmy over there in your department needs to take this over, and you just help grow, invest, and guide him in those, encompass the gig and help them take on those things, even though it's gonna be a little bit more painful." Because actually, here's a great quote. If you've ever heard of Firestone tires, Harvey Firestone said, "It is only when we develop others that we permanently succeed." And so we have to ask ourselves, are we investing in people? Are we developing people? Because until we do, we're not going to succeed. And that's a great quote I love to use. I think it's a great quote.
Okay. No, that's definitely correct. I don't know what to say on this, but I will just say that it's the key because if we wait until the crash, it's definitely already too late. So prevention is definitely the real resilience, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah. And also like would love to talk in short about the contradictory part as well. Like some might argue that and say that, but Harrison, if I stop pushing so hard, won't I lose my edge? Isn't burnout just
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a relevant one too, right?
yeah.
It's certainly relevant. I mean, I've definitely encountered this with many leaders. They're like, "Well, but I love just getting in there and doing it because it teaches me so much." And I'm no different. Actually, I'm already writing book 2 and I think about this all the time. Like, I just need to get in there and learn and do some of this stuff, rubbing elbows with some of these leaders because it gives me the best stories, right? And I can write about these stories and share with other people, but at the end of the day, you really have to step back and you have to say, do I want a business that or want to always be in a position where it does depend on me? Because if you do, then just keep doing what you're doing, right? But there's a balance to this. Yes, dive in and rub. This does not mean when you empower and delegate, it does not mean you're gonna lose your edge because you're a great leader already, or else you wouldn't be in the position you are. You wouldn't be owning that business, you wouldn't be, running that department or running that team. You're already a great leader. You're not gonna lose your edge. That's what got you where you are in the first place.
Yeah.
So you have to get over that fear. But second, I think that
Mm.
you have to still balance this. Your team is still gonna need you, and that's what it means to build a business that thrives with you. It shouldn't depend on you, but when those moments when they're struggling, you get to dive in, roll up your sleeves, and do the work with them. And so it's never like, again, it's not like this. I'm never going to preach to you that you should be on a beach somewhere collecting money, right? No, no, no. You're going to be there with your team when they need you. And that's what it means to be there when to have a business that thrives with you. It just shouldn't depend
Yeah.
on you. So don't be afraid of losing your edge because that's what got you
Mm.
in that place in the first for the first reason anyway. So you're ready to dive in.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. So any advice you'd
Do you
like
agree with
to?
that, Avik? obviously,
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
I agree.
you've seen it.
I agree. Yes, I agree. I think that that's the heart of it, because the true ambition, I'd say, like the true ambition is not just about burning brighter for a short time, but it's all about sustaining the fire for the longer journey.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Good way to put it. Good way to put it.
exactly. Yeah. So, any advice you'd like to give to the listeners today?
Yeah, I think I think,
Mm,
Picasso said this, said something like, "The meaning of life is to find your gift.
mm.
The purpose of life is to give it away."
Wow.
And, I'm a huge fan, like, I illustrated the book as well, so all the drawings in it are original to me, and, um, Picasso is obviously a very inspirational person, so when I think about this, the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to give it away. I think that every leader in any business, small or large, corporate or privately held, it doesn't matter to me,
Mm,
if you can find your gifts within what you do and your responsibilities, then the purpose of it is going to be that you give it away. And giving it away, going back to the Harvey Firestone quote, it's only as we develop others that we permanently succeed. Giving it away is actually developing people. And I just don't think that we were meant. I don't think God created us so that we could hold it all in and keep it all to ourselves and try to do it all ourselves and be the business and right? We don't want leaders to be the business. We want leaders to lead the business. And so if I'd give any advice to the listeners is, take the framework, the 8 to Great that we have in the book, Exit Without Leaving, take that framework and really put it to use because I promise you, if you talk to your top line leaders, you talk to your teams about this, you're gonna find so many ways that you can strengthen your business and they're they're wanting you to build this kind of business. They want you to. They're asking you to. They're crying for you to do it, right? And we just have to take the first step and really put it to practice. So I guess that leaves a little mysterious like curiosity for the listeners like pick up the book, listen it comes out in October, so I can't wait to the listeners to be able to get it. But take the framework and try to put it to use because you're going to find so many practical ways that you can build this kind of business.
Uh, okay. Yeah. Amazing. Lovely. So, Harrison, thank you so much for reminding us that the leadership and masculinity are about the exhaustion, control, and less sacrifice. And for everyone who is listening, I'll just say, and maybe the question to ask yourself today is, if I stepped away tomorrow, what I mean, would what I have built still stand, and would I still feel whole? So that's very important. And with this hope, dear listeners, I'll put all the details and the links in the show notes for your easy reference so that you can easily reach out to Harrison. And with this hope, until next time, keep redefining strength, keep building with alignment, and keep living with the impact. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.